There is so much to talk about regarding The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel. We got to talk about it some more. Welcome back, my friends, to another video here on the channel. Today, we're going to be kind of, focusing in on one specific kind of subcategory regarding the Breath of the Wild sequel, and that's going to be dungeons. I want to talk about dungeons a little bit. We might touch on a couple other things lightly, but that's going to be the main focus because this is something that kind of came up, with the initial reveal, the first trailer of the sequel to Breath of the Wild. When it's re-sparked in this new trailer because of something that fans are noting and they've noticed in this trailer. Before we do jump into it though, make sure you guys stick around, do a variety of Nintendo-based content here on the channel. We're going to be streaming Breath of the Wild sequel whenever it comes out, like the good old days, man. We streamed the first one when it came out, launch day. Those are such good times. If you were there, you know. If you weren't there, well, maybe you'll know in the future when Breath of the Wild sequel comes out and we do it again. Anyways, so I want to throw up a screenshot up on screen from Reddit. So this is from a Reddit post. I'm going to throw it up right now. You guys can see on the left, it's the first game. It's a screenshot from Breath of the Wild that's already out. From the right, it's from the trailer for Breath of the Wild sequel. Now, if you look at Death Mountain in the background, the lava has basically dried up on the right-hand side. Now, some game companies have been known to change things up in trailers to avoid spoilers. Same thing with movie trailers and things like that. But I don't think that's the case here. What the Reddit user noted in their post was that Death Mountain is no longer leaking lava, and this could mean that it's accessible, kind of like the fact that it was a main dungeon in the original Legend of Zelda game. Now, what's interesting about that specifically is Aonuma has confirmed in the past that this game, Breath of the Wild, at least the first game, was heavily influenced by the original Legend of Zelda game. They want to go back to the roots kind of thing, kind of make it more open world. There's a lot of influence from the original classic, first game that ever came out. They want to go back to that kind of starting point for this game and take a lot of influence from it in creating, Breath of the Wild. So seemingly, obviously, that's going to carry over to Breath of the Wild sequel to some extent because Breath of the Wild sequel is set in the same world. Now, what's interesting about that is I definitely think there has to be something to this, right? I mean, there has to be a reason. First of all, from a story perspective, from a lore perspective, there's got to be a reason why the lava dried up. And that could just be, the calamity's not, there anymore. I think part of what was going on, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just kind of, spitballing off of what I think is my memory. But I think part of what made the volcano so active in the first game was the calamity, right? Am I mistaken? Let me know in the comments below. I might be wrong about that. Either way, the fact that there seems to be no more lava in the sequel from the trailer is very, very interesting. And yes, it could mean that we're going to be going into it and it could be a dungeon. Now, I do think classic dungeons are going to make a comeback, and there's a couple things I want to note that kind of point in that direction. Nothing's really confirmed, unfortunately. We don't have any kind of, set in stone, confirmation about it. But one of the biggest complaints about the game, for me personally, and what I've seen online from a lot of people, is the lack of traditional dungeons. It just, the Divine Beasts did not satisfy the itch for, Zelda dungeons. The shrines were really cool, and they were a little bit closer to satisfying that itch, but even then, it didn't fully satisfy the itch, 120 shrines, I had a blast doing that. Not the 900 Koroks. Please, no more Korok seeds. I mean, from a canon perspective, we've already found all the Koroks, right? There's no way there's more, right? Please? No? Anyways. But yeah, so the shrines were really cool. And I think, based on the shrines and the puzzles that were in there, and how fans felt about the shrines, I'm pretty sure Aonuma and the team knows, that the fans want classic dungeons to return. So I'm pretty sure, I think it's safe to say that we'd probably get classic dungeons returning just in and of itself for that reason. But we have a couple interviews that I actually found, and they're older interviews, of course, but I thought they were interesting to note. Now, one of them is more speculation, one of them is official. So I'm going to start with the official one. This is from Aonuma, and there's a couple different quotes, and it's obviously not very direct, but if you kind of look and pick apart what he's saying, you can kind of get a little bit of a vague idea of what they're kind of, looking to on improving. going into Breath of the Wild sequel. So the first one, he says, one thing we learned from Breath of the Wild is that when we focused on creating a dungeon that has multiple solutions, it turned into this great title. That's one thing I want to polish up and use for inspiration going forward. So again, you know, they want to, he's aware of you know, polishing up and you know, kind of improving what was there in Breath of the Wild. The dungeons were not really great. The shrines were, so I don't know when he says a dungeon if he's talking about a shrine, because the shrines were great and a lot of people really loved the shrines, myself included. The divine beasts were cool, but they're not really unique, and they were very just like, I don't know, man. It didn't feel like a classic dungeon. It didn't feel good. It just kind of felt like, what, you know, okay, it's fun, it's cool, it's whatever. But personally, I really miss the old school kind of classic dungeons. Now, this is actually an old interview with I think it was with Kotaku from. This is, I think, when Breath of the Wild sequel first got announced back in like 2019. So these interviews are old, just so you guys know, but I'm just bringing them back up to light regarding this argument. Now, the other one is unofficial. It's more of a leaker, where this person has leaked, you know, things in the past correctly. I think their name is Mick Vicker or something. They were right about like the Half-Life Alyx rumors and all that, you know. One thing that they said about Breath of the Wild sequel, and then take it with a grain of salt, but it's interesting because I mean, some of what they're saying is not really leaks, but it's just kind of things to point out that make sense. Other things, I guess you could see maybe more leakish. I don't know. So number one was that the game at the beginning apparently will be more linear. Now I don't know what that means, you know, per se. But I'm for that, because I felt like the sequel was a little bit too open. It was so open where it was kind of like, well, you know, there's some missable story points and whatnot. It's cool to have this world you can explore, but you should still have kind of a linear path, in my opinion. And that's kind of what keeps, you know, the story focused and kind of really hits home, you know, from again, from a story perspective. Now, obviously, from a canon perspective, Link already knows Hyrule. There's no point in climbing the towers again. This is what the person is noting, by the way. Again, this is old. So they're saying instead the developers have filled the world with miasmic version of Ganon. I'm not familiar with that word. I'm sorry. And until the infection is cleared from location to location, it will be impossible to move around the entire Hyrule. So apparently, that's again, these are leaks, you know, taken with a grain of salt, rumors, whatever you want to call them. Now, in regard to the location, or in this regard, rather, the locations are worked out much deeper than in the original Breath of the Wild. And this person hints at the appearance of dungeons, which are going to be strongly inspired by one game that knows a lot about spreading dungeons around the open world. In general, while designing the world of Breath of the Wild 2, apparently the developers were inspired by Red Dead Redemption 2 and some other game, which is unknown. I think that is actually, that part is I'm pretty sure I heard that officially somewhere, but I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt as well. So again, these are just kind of rumors and speculation, whatnot, but they're kind of interesting notes, right? And like I said, there's things you got to keep in mind that from, you know, a canon point of view, it wouldn't make sense to redo, like all the towers, right? Link's already activated them all. So assumingly we're not going to have to do that in the sequel, it would make no sense. Same thing with the 900 Korok seeds, right? We're not going to have to find them again because we assumingly already did. I hope. If there's more Korok seeds, I'm going to cry, but you know what? I'm going to do it again. If there are 900 Korok seeds, I'm gonna do it again because I'm a sucker for that, and I'm just whatever. So I don't know. There's a couple different things that I feel like point towards, you know, classic dungeons returning. I mean, there's not a lot of information that's official, but taking a look at that screenshot posted on Reddit, I thought it kind of re-sparked conversation. I kind of want to discuss it really quick. I do think that we're gonna get classic dungeons returning. I mean, what else is there to do, right? The divine beasts, I mean, they're done, right? We've done the shrines, you know. Again, you got to think all of this from a canon perspective. These things are done, unless we're going back in time, like some people are, you know, obviously speculating, which I think is a possibility. But are we going back in time or in the future? Could be back, possibly, most likely could be, you know, back in time. I don't know which way we're going in time. In that way, you could kind of justify bringing back things like Korok Seeds or Shrines or Divine Beasts or whatever. But even in that regard, I think we're going to get classic dungeons. I think there's been kind of hints of it in the trailer to some extent, you know, not blatantly obvious, but I'm hoping. And with that, I do hope we get some level of traditional weapons returning. That's one thing that, you know, I personally am strong on. I know some people love that, you know, the breakable weapons and whatnot. I just want my classic weapons, man. If they're upgradable, okay, that's fine, whatever, you know, start with like I mean, okay, again, from a canon perspective, you know, it wouldn't make sense to not have the Master Sword unless we're traveling back in time. Then okay, then it's a different scenario. So I'm sure they're gonna work around that somehow. But again, you know, the weapon system would be nice to see some kind of, you know, classic weapons returning to some extent, you know, like a hero's bow or something. I don't know, whatever, that's just me. But at least classic dungeons. I really want to see classic dungeons. I think we're going to. I think, you know, this is kind of pointing in that direction, but it's not blatantly obvious. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think classic dungeons are going to return? Do you want them to return? Let me know what you guys think. I hope they do, and I hope they're, you know, thematically set, right? Like each dungeon is different. You know, you got like the forest kind of dungeon, you got kind of like a deserty kind of dungeon. You know, I like that personally, right? There's kind of key elements to, in my opinion, that what makes a Zelda game, right? Other things are more kind of, you know, you can kind of, you know, they're more interchangeable, you can kind of tweak and whatnot. But I think there's key elements that just kind of make a Zelda game. And I feel like, you know, some of those key elements were lacking in the first game, and I really hope to make a return in the sequel personally. So let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe if you guys new. We'll talk about more Breath of the Wild sequel as we lead up to the launch, and then eventually we're going to play it. I'm going to have more guides for you guys on the channel. My most viewed video to this day is a guide on Breath of the Wild. It was just crazy, man. I loved making those videos. It was so much fun, and it seemed like a lot of people loved watching them. So thanks for watching this video. I will see you guys soon in another one. Let me know your thoughts, and until then, game on.